And now I get it off to Dr. Battle, Director of Schools, to present her report.
Thank you so much, Chair Player. I appreciate you kicking off this committee meeting. I will go ahead, if it's okay, to jump into the conversation today. Can we change the deck on the screen, please? All right, so today during our capital committee meeting, we will be focusing in on some work around our Metro Schools Reimagined signature initiative. This is work that we're extremely proud of. That really kicked off prior to the pandemic because for some reason we had some foresight into things changing a little bit over the last few years. So we'll go ahead and jump into that. We're going to ground ourselves. One second. That's me clicking. Okay, thank you. We're going to ground ourselves, as we always do, in our signature initiatives. First and foremost, we're going to focus in on the center of this particular slide, grounding ourselves in our core tenets, who we are, and also the focus outcomes. This is work that we're extremely proud of with the level of coherence and alignment we have in and across our district by articulating the goals that we have for every student every year based upon where they are and where they need to be. And on the outside of this graphic, you see our signature initiatives. Our signature initiatives help describe our work, particularly as a support hub, and how we're coming alongside our schools to make sure that we're realizing the goals set forth in our focused outcomes. So again, that means ensuring that our students, our individual students, meet or exceed their expectations every year. So this is a really exciting conversation because we're well positioned. We have been fortunate to receive significant capital investments over the last few years. I always take this opportunity first before I get into the details of thanking this board, again, for your leadership, again, our council and our mayor for just continued commitment in this space. And we can only have this conversation today around some of the rezoning proposals that are forthcoming due to expanded capacities in our schools. So since last school year, we're celebrating lots of facility expansions, including last year opening up the new Lawson High School, as well as our new Goodlettsville Elementary School. We completed new additions at Old Center Elementary School, as well as Cane Ridge High School, which increased their capacity and seats in their learning environment. We are so proud that we've completed our fifth grade transition, resetting our grade configuration here in Metro Nashville Public Schools. We started construction on replacement and major renovations at 3 of our elementary schools, including Lakeview Elementary, Paragon Mills Elementary, and Percy Priest Elementary. And in the Antioch cluster, we're closing in on a land purchase to build an entirely new elementary school in the Antioch cluster. So really exciting upgrades and updates to our facilities here at Metro Nashville Public Schools, and helps us to stay really grounded on who we are and providing equitable learning opportunities to and for our students. All right, so when we think about our vision around Metro Schools Reimagined, we envision and have reimagined the ways in which MNPS provides equitable education opportunities for all students. And we synthesize academic data, community input, and feedback and research to help us chart the path forward. This vision requires cohesive academic planning, SEL, integrated learning environments. In fact, we see academics and SEL being highly integrated and aligned district supports. So the Reimagine Uniform strategies ensure that there is consistency across all of our MNPS clusters, even while each has its unique cluster academic identity. The district-wide fifth grade transition supports our grade configuration, as I just mentioned, pre-K to 5, 6 through 8, 9, 12 school model uniform strategy.
Make sure Chair Player can hear us still. Sorry. Chair Player, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
It's always the mistake hitting mute on your end. All right, you can advance the slide. So before we get into some of our proposed updates to our school zones, I want to first ground this conversation. Much of the way our district looks today comes out of decades worth of conversations between civil rights advocates and this MNPS school board. Back in 1955, a lawsuit was filed, Kelly versus the Board of Education, to enforce school desegregation in Nashville. And over the years, the district worked on different plans to manage student assignments as the city grew. It turned into one of the longest active civil rights litigation in U.S. history. In 1998, the courts declared the district as unitary, meaning the schools were no longer under deseg orders. But the district still had to maintain equal access to education for all students. To help with that, the school board created a plan that grouped students into common feeder patterns so kids could stay together from elementary through high school. They also introduced more school choice options like magnets and some of our very robust non-traditional programs. Since then, we have continued to make adjustments based on school construction and population changes. We also have several criteria, as you can see on the slide, established actually in state law that govern the factors that can be used in determining school assignments. We also have our 4 bedrock ideas that have grounded our assignment plans, as well as principles that we have looked at in making the proposed changes that you will hear this evening. So on this slide, you'll see a little more background on our zoning history. With the 1998 pupil assignment plan designed to meet the bedrock and principles of our zoning philosophy, with a shift in 2004 and 5 to regular reviews and updates of our zoning plans to meet the changing needs of our student populations. So part of this plan requires of us to routinely review our zoning to make sure that as the city shifts and as the population shifts, so does our rezoning plans. So this evening, we will be discussing in just a moment 3 very specific rezoning plans that cover mainly the Glencliff cluster, the Antioch cluster, and the Hillsborough cluster. So I would like to, at this time, turn it over to Ryan Latimer to walk us through those specific plans before he turns it back over to me to close out the presentation. Ryan, take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Battle. Good afternoon, board members. Just a little quick overview as we get going. The proposals tonight are going to all kind of have a similar feel. They kind of have an opening slide that goes over a quick level recommendation. The next we'll have some slides on the ongoing construction, and then we'll delve a little bit deeper into the specifics of the proposal. And I did kind of want to highlight this before we start tonight, that, and I will mention this several times again, but that we will be extending the grandfathering option to anybody that's impacted by the rezoning proposals that we're going to discuss. So they would have the option to remain at the school they're currently at if they choose to, but would have to provide their own transportation. All right, so we're going to start with the Glencliff cluster. We're going to recommend that we rezone Napier Elementary School into Glencliff, rezone a small portion of Whitsett into Napier, and rezone Margaret Allen from the Antioch cluster into the Glencliff cluster and make it a new feeder school into Glencliff High School. And again, this is just one of the highlights that was already mentioned. This is the new Paragon Mills renovation that will open next year. And then so the map on the right shows what the Glencliff cluster would look like with Napier ES and Margaret Allen. Geographically, Napier is a very good fit for the Glencliff cluster, and the majority of the students will have a much shorter commute to the new feeder schools, Margaret Allen and Glencliff. The rezoning will impact 67 students from Two Rivers Middle School and 136 students from McGavick High School. And again, we would extend those families and those students the grandfathering option. The plan would create 2 true feeder middle schools into Glencliff High School And the feeder pattern would be Fall Hamilton, Glenview, Napier, and Whitsett would feed into Margaret Allen and then into Glencliff High School. And then Glencliff, Glengarry, and Paragon Mills would remain feeding into Wright and then Glencliff High School. And the map on the right shows kind of a little blow up of the Glencliff cluster. And in the purplish area is Whitsett's zone, and just above that is Napier in the kind of the orange color. And in between that and the kind of the darker brown is the area that we had rezoned from Whitsett into Napier. This would impact 37 students. And again, we would offer the grandfathering option. And kind of the boundary there is it's Murfreesboro Road on the north, then going clockwise is followed by Foster Avenue, the railroad, then finishes up at I-40. And these changes and the renovations of Paragon Mills will add almost 800 seats of capacity to the cluster and will provide a continuous GPA experience for the students as they transition from elementary to middle to high school. Dr. Battle, do you want me to just keep going through or take questions? Okay. Thank you. And so, as we just discussed, we would be moving Margaret Allen from the Antioch cluster into the Glencliff cluster. So we do need to adjust the feeder patterns to account for that change. And we're also looking to unify the split feeder pattern of Smith Springs. Currently, half their students feed to Apollo and the other half feed into JFK. And with this change, all of their students will feed into JFK Middle School. Just an overview of the renovations taking place at Lakeview. And then just kind of a placer slide for what the future Antioch Cluster Elementary School will look like, or could look like. And so UNA will now feed into Apollo Middle School, and the students will have a much shorter travel time. This rezoning will impact roughly 260 students from Margaret Allen into Apollo. And we will unify Smith Springs. You can kind of see it's two shades of green there. That's the line that did split them, but they will be all will feed into Apollo with this change. That impacts roughly 125 students. Again, we would offer the grandfathering option to these families, and this will better utilize our current capacities and fill up the two schools. We did leave a little bit of room in Apollo for the future rezoning once that new elementary school gets built. And last one is Hillsborough, and we're going to recommend rezoning a small portion of Julia Green Elementary School into the Percy Priest zone. There's a look at the new facility coming online next year. And the rezoning is the little brown area. The green is the Julia Green zone, and I guess that red color is Percy Priest. There's roughly 28 students would be impacted by that. Again, we would extend the grandfathering option. And the new Percy Preschool is being built much larger than the current facility. So even with the small rezoning, they will still have plenty of room for additional students. I think that is back to you.
For FY 25-26 that I want to make sure we cover as a part of this conversation, but separate with regards to the process moving forward. The first thing is that for next school year, we'll be converting the remaining enhanced options to district school schedule. And then that'll give us an opportunity to reassess our investment strategy for those schools and looking at a different approach in reinvestment to make sure students continue to accelerate in their academic outcomes and also socially, emotionally. The second item is that our choice schools and schools that offer choice enrollment will be set to program capacity as we move forward. We've talked on many occasions in capital meetings about the different ways that you can define capacity. We're going to consistently implement our policy around setting that at program capacity so that we can fill every seat available in every school with regards or in alignment to our school choice process. We're also next year increasing capacity of the middle to high school arts pathways. Right now, those pathways have a cap of the number of students who can exercise their choice to attend the arts pathway. In this way, we're going to open up an unlimited amount of recognizing talent in our students. And so students who demonstrate an interest or aptitude around the arts, we're going to make sure that as capacity is available, that they have access to those seats. We're also going to modify the Stanford Elementary Geographic Priority Zone, the GPZ zone, to the entire McGavick cluster. This will allow us to clean up just some variation or variance, if you will, in the types of options that parents can utilize. This actually increases the number of families who will have access to the GPZ zone in the McGavick cluster. We're also removing two zoning options that are unused in the Hillsborough cluster. Those would be the GPZ and the cluster preference. Right now, we've only had one family in the last 5 to 6 years utilize that option, mainly because it's redundant to our system, to our school choice system. And so we want to make sure that we have consistency in our language practices and the way in which we support our families. So in no way limiting access, but also actually granting more access to families to choose their school of choice. And then the last option here is or last recommendation we'll be moving forward with is to align optional school transportation with district policy. Our district policy is that we provide transportation to every student with their zone school option. When there are choice options, we, as a district, currently do not provide transportation. And so we're doing a review to make sure that every school is in alignment with their policy. We are aware of at least one scenario that we'll be working with families and the bus driver around to make sure that we address the school bus dropping off and picking up at one of our school choice schools. That is a bigger conversation for a later day, but for next school year, we'll be aligning all of our transportation to our district policy. And in true fashion, whenever we're talking about rezoning or significant shifts in our district, we will be hosting 3 community meetings out in the community, mainly in the spaces that we've talked about today. So these recommendations are mainly focused in on the Glencliff, Antioch, and Hillsborough clusters. And so we've selected some sites that are most accessible to our families and to these convenings to have these conversations in the community. You see our proposed dates on the slide, October 21st, 24th, and 28th. Our team will be out in the community just sharing these rezoning proposals, one for transparency and also for feedback and communication purposes. And that all will take place ahead of any approval from the board. So I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware and the community is also aware. We'll be communicating directly with families within those clusters as an additional point of communication and awareness with them. And then lastly, I am bringing a recommendation before the board for my team, the administration, to explore renaming one of our schools in honor of Judge Richard H. Dinkins, who we know we lost almost a year ago, almost to the date on October 1st. We know and have experienced and learned so much about his dedication to equity and educational opportunities to all of our students, going all the way back to his work in advocacy along with Avon Williams and the Kelly versus Board of Education work. And so in his honor, we would love to have the support of the board to explore the opportunity to rename one of our schools in his honor. And so with that, Chair, I will turn it back over to you to see if there's any questions or discussions regarding these proposals, keeping at the forefront that our plan is to have community meetings out in the community during the month of October. And I'll also note that This is a timing consideration as well. We want to make sure that families are well informed ahead of the school choice process of any rezoning changes or tweaks, if you will, for next school year so that they can plan appropriately. And so this timeline affords us the opportunity to do that before bringing these particular proposals back to the board. So Chair, I will stop talking and turn it over to you.
All right, I'll recognize Board Member Mays for a question or comment.
Thank you, Chair Player. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Battle and her team for sharing this information. It is always a great opportunity for us to get as much information as far in advance as we possibly can. And I will be sharing additional details, well, these details about the upcoming community meetings at my next community meeting as well, so that we make sure that we have plenty of folks in attendance so that there are no questions that go unasked or unasked. And also, just as a personal point of privilege, I like the idea of the potentially renaming a school after Judge Dinkins. He was the judge who swore me in the first time I was on the school board, so I have a special place in my heart for him anyway. But thank you for sharing this information. I think it's a great move towards getting us right-sided as far as our utilization is concerned, and I do appreciate the thorough information, so thank you for that.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Member O'Hara Block.
I wasn't sure if you could see me, so I was like, yeah, thank you. And I just, one quick question about process. You all, is there something specifically we should share from either this slide deck or something else with community members? I mean, you all will probably be advertising the community meetings, but would love anything that we should send specifically to folks as well.
We wanted to get through our conversation today. Our team is already positioned to
Great.
send communications out directly to families in each cluster. It's important when we're covering so much ground and with so much families that we have a consistent communication. We'll also share that information with board members so that
Great.
you can
Yeah.
share at your leisure.
Just to make sure that I don't want to get
Absolutely.
ahead of any communication from the district, but want to make sure to amplify whatever you all are putting out as we try and make sure folks that have questions get to community meetings. But one of the things the way I'm understanding the presentation, we're talking about 220, 230 students who could be rezoned right now, but will have the option to stay where they are. And then the rezoning will impact students going forward who will live in the areas that are rezoned, just to restate. I mean, I think I'm saying some people understand, but just to make sure.
That's correct. That's something that we always try to account for when we can. In these particular zoning proposals, we have the opportunity to allow the grandfathering clause for families who are already there. Again, this is not any changes for this current year. We would always try to avoid that for our families because they're already planned and students already are settled in their school communities. But for next year, we are offering families who might be impacted for the rezoning already in their schools the opportunity to stay. Transportation will need to be provided by the family, but they have an opportunity for continuity in their current school. And then moving forward, this will be the rezoning pattern for students who are within these clusters and school zones.
And that the transportation thing just sort of jives with what you were saying about the overall review of transportation, which is if you are choosing to go in a different pattern than where you are zoned, then you're responsible for your own transportation.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the last question I had is just, what, if anything, does this mean for teachers who are currently in those schools? I would imagine it's pretty similar to a sort of regular adjustment we might see based on enrollment.
We're not anticipating any significant teacher adjustments. Mainly, you see here small numbers of students and families who are being impacted. So we don't anticipate any significant movement. So let me liken this to fifth grade transitions when we were tweaking our grade configuration. We don't anticipate that level of impact here. What we do anticipate doing is what we do normally every year, is that enrollment drives our student-based budgeting. And so when we're talking about whether it's a group of 30 or 50 students, those funds, those investments follow the students. And so we will be making those adjustments accordingly.
Great, thank you very much.
Vice Chair Nabhan.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for informing us about the changes that are looking to happen. I'm really excited about some of the changes. I think we've had some discussion about especially Napier and how far students were having to travel to get to Two Rivers Middle. So my question along the lines here is, I know that you're having the community meetings for Glencliff, Antioch, and Hillsborough, but will we have any conversations with McGavick families who are impacted by these decisions?
Yes, so the community meetings themselves, we chose those because that's the greatest impact. But those families are also invited and welcome to attend those community meetings. In fact, you could attend any of them if you want to.
Yeah.
We just wanted to make sure that for proximity purposes, we were touching as many families as we could. So all meetings are open to every family, and yes, we welcome families outside of these clusters who might have some indirect implications or direct implications to be a part of the conversation.
Okay, and then once that information gets ready to be put out, if you could just share it so I can share it out to our community.
Oh,
if that's
absolutely.
okay.
We will use our normal process for notifying and updating our board when the communication goes out, and then we'll get it out to our families.
Okay, thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions, comments? All right, seeing none, thank you, Dr. Battle, for your presentation and for your staff. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.